biggest buck today. I got a doe. Right there in that opening. She's feeding in the ag field. Trying to get her attention, but she seems to be a little bit preoccupied. There she goes, right there. I don't know if I can get her. There she goes. Maybe she'll come closer. It's hard getting her off the ag field. Alright. So now she's brought a friend. You can see him right there in those gaps. There's another one that just showed up back over in here. But I'm watching these two. The one to the left right there, that might be the mama. But there's a deer feeding up in between these two trees. You can't see her. But they're feeding right on top of a hill here. There she is, right there. Roll call here. So in the morning wasn't much thrills. I got in the tree stand about a little bit before 6 o'clock, somewhere in there, probably around 6 o'clock. And sunrise wasn't until 6:55. So it's almost an hour wait for the sun to come up. I was sitting there. First couple of deer came out behind me. The wind at that point was northwest, so I was downwind of them, but scent was good today. As they came in, I caught them off the corner of my eye, and it was a doe, which seemed like a buck trailing her. Again, I couldn't quite see through the brush. Deer didn't quite look up. I gave a little bit of a grunt, one or two grunts, to no avail. Again, it was windy out. It was like 10 to 15, maybe 15 to 20 at certain times with the wind gusts. So, you know, you got trees blowing, leaves dropping, twigs falling out of there, out of the tree. So it was pretty tough to hear. Maybe I should have grunted a little louder. That way I would have really determined what was going on. But those deer moved off. 5 or 10 minutes later, a big doe family group came. They must have came from the far end of the field and worked their way back to the edge. And then they exited kind of in front of me, but I'd say 30 or 40 yards in front of me. I counted them. There were 6 of them. But you know, shooting that distance, there's tree limbs, tree branches. I mean, if I would have set my tree stand up further to the right of me and deeper back into the woods there, probably would have got a shot. But coulda, woulda, shoulda. So got out of the tree stand close to 9 o'clock, maybe a little after 9, not much. Went home, kind of contemplated, you know, what I was going to do, because the wind was still, it was howling here. It was whipping really bad here. I mean, you know, from a 30-minute ride, you know, it was drastically different in conditions. So I can't really base it off of here at my house of what the conditions are going to be 30 minutes away. So, you know, I looked at Cindy. I said, I don't know. I said, it's windy. If it's windy here, it's going to be windy there, but maybe not as windy. And she's like, you never know. So I ended up going. I took off, and I got to this tree stand around close to 3:30, maybe about 3:15, somewhere in there. I sat from that time to about 5:45 and started to see some deer. They were coming in off this big hill, and I noticed the a big doe that was kind of doing a little patrolling there. I can see her head up in the air, sniffing, just smelling and smelling. And I was like, at that time the wind had switched to a westerly wind, so it's hit me in the back instead of coming across my face. So she wasn't downwind of me. We were pretty much, parallel together. But you never know. It's hard tricking a deer's nose at times. So I just sat there and watched her. And then I heard some thumping out a little bit past me. And I seen another doe come out. And I was like, uh-oh, here they come. This might be the same doe family that I missed this morning. And then way off into the corner of some hay bales, I seen 2 more deer come out. Well, the deer that had arrived at the field, there's a couple more with her, but they were on the back side of the hill. I didn't know they were there. They came up over, so at that point, there's a lot of deer. And I was, getting excited. And, I tried to do a couple bleat calls, but again, it's still pretty windy. You got tree branches going and whatnot. There's a lot of crows. I don't know about you. I've never eaten a crow, but if they keep on becoming a nuisance, because they were either above my tree stand in the tree that I'm in, or they're across in the other tree. So they're crowing, and I'm like, shut up, because I can't hear, and I'm hearing some stuff off to the right of me, and it's a chipmunk and squirrel fighting over territory or whatever they're doing. And so I'm trying to keep my eye on these deer, and then they kind of crest the bottom of the hill. Well, a doe came along, and she came close to the edge of the property I'm hunting in that ag field. So I did a doe bleat, and she looked the other way. So that can tell you that sound's traveling away from me, which I want the sound to kind of, stay within my parameter, not go that way, because she started walking that way. And I was like, so I got, a little bit lower in my tree stand and dumped the call. And then she came back. There was another one with her that must have came out of the far end of that field. And she had moseyed up and met up with the other deer. But this other one was really curious. I'd say she's about 2.5-year-old deer. It was a good sized deer. It's a good eater. And I got really excited, and I'm sitting there waiting, and she's 25, 30 yards from me. And then she starts putting her nose in the air, and, I get my little wind checker out, and I squirt a little bit, and the wind's still going, from my back straight out that way. So, she's off to my right here, or my left, I should say, excuse me. And I'm watching her, and then she kind of disappears. She walks back the other way towards the other end of the field, and I lost sight of her. So then I started paying attention to the other deer, and they started coming off that hill, and they're getting closer and closer and closer. Lo and behold, here she comes, and she glides up a little bit, so I dipped a doe call. Well, she heard it that time. I waited right when the wind kind of stopped and it got really, low, and then I dipped a doe call, and she heard it. So, I put it down, and I got my crossbow up. I just need her to come into this spot, this little section, and it's a section that a trail that they made where they, from all the times traveling throughout the spring and summer times, they really trampled it off, and it's a great little pathway. And then that pathway would lead up to my food plot if it was still there, but that's ravaged and gone. But she came in, oh man, she got broadside, but I would have to kind of turn around and lean out of my stand to try and get a shot free-handed, because I do have a shooting rail there. I think I'm going to look into another instrument for that, where I can just set it there. That way I can, because, I don't know if you've ever held a crossbow, but, if you're just sitting there, just waiting for the shot, your arms start getting tired. So she comes back through, and she goes behind trees, and I can see her head going beyond the trees, and she knows she's interested. She starts to walk off a little bit, and I dipped the doe call again, and then she came back, and she just wouldn't commit. Basically, we played this game for 20 minutes, just trying to get her to commit, because she was on the cusp. I'm gonna have pictures of her when I go and recover the camera, because I put a camera in that spot to see if they were gonna use that hole ever. I've only seen 2 deer use that spot off that camera, and it was the big buck, and then it was the little 4 that comes through sometimes. I've never seen any other does use it. They use this other spot down the way to get into that portion of the woods. So she stood right in front of the spot I needed her to walk into, and she stood there, ate some grass. So I know my scent's good. I know my spot's good. I just need her to commit. And she started to walk off a little bit down the other section of the field. So I dipped the doe call again. This time I dipped it from the other side, just trying to get her to think what's going on. And she came back. Again, we did this for 20 minutes. So she's not a really older deer, but she's right in the middle age there. So she's interested, she wants to see what's going on. So I pick up the crossbow. Now she's creeping into the spot I need her to go to. So where my hand is, if I'm looking that way, she's about this far. So I need her to come back. I need her to come back into this hole. And it's a hole, and I mean it's pretty big. And I can get an arrow through there. There's no limbs. There's just 2 trees on the side of there. So she just would not come into that thing, and she just walked back around it, and then walked back down the field. Finally, I looked out in the field, and there's 15, 20 deer. Look at my time. Guess what? That's the one thing that we all fear the most is Father Time, because it'll either make you grow old or it'll end your hunting day. But I looked at it, got up my rope. I had 5 minutes. Got up my rope, put it around my crossbow. Lo and behold, she comes into this other section of the woods, and she's right there. So now I'm messing with my crossbow, and I pull it up, and she walks back out, and she walks right into this thing. She just would not come into that spot, and she walked right in front of there. I sat there and looked, and she's bobbing and weaving her head. She's looking down. She's looking low. I've been using this scent called Evercalm, and it's supposed to, be a natural calmer for deer. And it didn't spook her. It didn't do anything, because at times I could kind of catch a whiff of it because the wind started to swirl then. So I was like, okay, and I put some a scrape right at that exit to try and get that buck to go there, and I think she might have been smelling that as well. The buck scrape stuff. So she might have been hesitant, and that is why, because she might not want to mess with a doe or not, or a buck or not. So maybe that's why she was hesitant, but she never ever committed. She stood right at that entryway. I've shot a deer there before. If she would have came in and went down this little gully, she would have been broadside, and I would have put an arrow in her. But I mean, again, Father Time, So she walked off into the field with the other deer. They started to move off, and I just waited for them to move off. Got out of my stand, went in my car, and on the ride home, thought about, how I could right this wrong. How can I get these deer to commit? Because there was 2 deer that wanted to come into that spot. So I think the one thing I'm going to do for sure is to move that mock scrape. I think I'm going to move it because I have 2 mock scrapes. I have one in the far patch in front of me, and I have one off to my right side, because a lot of the bucks be using that path. They won't come down the tree line and then the field line. They'll come around it. It's almost like a football. They won't go straight through, but they'll go on the edges of it, just to stay out of there. And I'll show you. I'll throw this picture up here. This is a little 4 that's been coming around quite often. That might have been him out in the field in the morning, and he finally got himself a doe. I don't know, but I think I'm gonna have to move that scrape because again, if they're getting a whiff of it, and it drips in its own capacity, I have no control over it, so I might have to move it because again, the scrape is right by that entryway, and usually at this point in time, bucks and does they're either the bucks are either collected their does to start breeding, or they're just they're not going to be in the same area. It's really weird right now. They call it the October law. Look it up. I believe in it. I think it happens until the rut really begins, and that's usually in my neck of the woods around November, the first week of November. So it was disappointing. I was ready. I was Johnny on the spot. I think this is the first time I wasn't kind of, getting the shakes, man. I just wanted to get it done. Maybe I probably would have had the shakes after the shot if I got the opportunity. You get the shakes for that. I got the shakes from that shooting at that spike a week ago. So, I mean, it's just frustrating, not getting her to commit because she was awful curious, but again, she was just real hesitant. She knew something was going on. She was kind of interested in it. She didn't know if she wanted to go in there. She didn't know if she wanted to go off and join the other group of does, because there's two there. I prominently selected these couple of deer and really paid attention to them because they're the bigger of the two doe families. There's two doe families that meet up in this field. I see them all the time. I might call her Creepy Josephine after Joe Biden, because it seems she's always got either yearlings or almost fawnish type deer with her, babies with her. And when I say babies, I'm like 4 or 5 babies, man. Like she's out there collecting them. And then you have another group of mature does, and they all meet up there. I don't know if she's babysitting. You got me, man. But that's really creepy in my opinion. I don't know. Maybe it's not creepy in the deer world, but it is in the human world. Anyways, so I try and be selective, and I've seen one of the nanny nose before on my camera because she's got a white spot. Usually they're white underneath. She's got a white spot right on the back of her. So almost, I wouldn't call her a piebald, but she's very descriptive when you see her, to the T, especially when you get her on camera. And she's had fawns before with her. I don't know if this deer stole her fawns. Maybe she's a deer kidnapper. I don't know, or deer napper. But those two groups met today, and I really got to see some of these bigger does up close, which is cool. Again, they'll hang good. I'll get a good portion off of them. But again, just the commitment issues. Humans have those commitment issues too. So maybe I won't get to hunt until probably next week. I got fish fry coming up on Friday for the VFW. So I always volunteer my time there during fish fry season there. But maybe I'll go out in the morning. But somebody else asked me if I wanted to go hunting for something else. So we'll have to see what goes on. But man, it's just like this close. So maybe I'll have some good luck coming up here in the next week or so, because sooner or later, some of these deer are going to start vanishing off, and they'll show up, just the middle of November into December, and after that, you're going to be really pressing because you got gun season and then you have muzzleloader, and that's when hunting pressure really, really ramps up, and these deers will disappear. Sometimes the bucks will go nocturnal and they won't come out in the sunlight. So, vampire bucks, so it's just, was it a missed opportunity? I would call it that. I mean, I'm going to have to probably maybe move that mock scrape. I mean, unless she was just curious of the mock scrape. But again, I do have a camera facing that way, and that might have grabbed her attention too when the light goes off. So I'm gonna probably move those two things, move them out of there. If not, I'm gonna move the camera out of there. But it gives me really good shots of the deer, up close shots of those deer. That way I can find identifiers for them, and then I can really tell, whether it's a buck or a doe, without being, in the shadows. So that was the end of day 5, man. It was exciting. You kind of get the jitters a little bit. Today, I think the I don't know what you call it, disappointment's kind of setting in. Now I'll be pressing, especially when gun comes around. When gun comes around, the deer vanish, and they vanished often. I've sat through a gun season at one point and didn't see any deer, and then until after gun season, I shot a doe with a bow, because bow runs through from October 1st all the way to January 1st. So that should tell you something. And that was in a real good spot too. It was between bedding and feeding, like this other spot is. So we'll have to see what goes on. I'd like to thank everybody that watches my boring deer hunting videos. I greatly do appreciate it. Hopefully luck will turn, and then you'll get satisfaction if I score a point on the board. But other than that, I'd like to thank my old and my new subscribers, just the people that zip through. Really do appreciate it. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Do that for everybody that you watch. And like always, guys, we'll catch you on the next one.